Now, I would like to show you how to create a sample data for SQL Account GST version. What you need to do is just after you install, you can choose to evaluate with sample data, or you can come here and create sample database, and in this case we will do a sample testing company. Up to you if you want to create a separate different name for the company, and sample data will automatically be created for you. You just need to wait about 1 to 2 minutes. A sample data has been created. Just double click on it. The username for sample data is admin. Password is the same, admin. Small cap or big cap, it doesn't make a difference once you have logged in. Now, regardless of whether it's a sample data or a upgrade version or even a blank data, the concept is the same. You will need to go to GST and create a GST profile by clicking Start GST Now. Select the country of your choice. In this case, I will choose Malaysia, and just to make sure, we let you choose Malaysian flag again, and you do have to do this tick, because once you have selected a particular country GST, in this case Malaysia, there will be no more reversal of what you have done. So kindly select correctly, and you can choose next. And over here there is a date selection. In Malaysia, the first date for GST is 1st of April 2015, and in this case, if there is a situation where a new company is set up, let's say in 2016, they can forward date or forward the year and choose a new date for their GST effective date. Next, give it a GST number. In this case, I will key in a sample. Alright, and the rest is just let it continue automatically, and you have done the GST setting profile. Now what you need to do is log in again. Once you log in, if you go to the GST menu, you will see there is a new drop down list for your GST functions. Now I'd like to talk about how to maintain tax codes in SQL account. First, go to GST, the menu drop down, and you will see a maintain tax table here. Now I'm going to talk about the Malaysian tax codes. First, there is 23 tax codes provided by the Malaysian customs, and all 23 of them are actually here. And the four most important tax codes in Malaysia would be for sales, standard rated under SR, for purchase under TX, and of course for zero rated ZR, as well as exempted. 90% of the businesses will only require these four tax codes, and vast majority of your transactions will only require these four. So these are the only four that most clients will need to remember. The rest of the 19s are actually unique situations, as and when you need them, you can call your accountant as well as tax advisors. If custom do decide to add additional tax codes, of course there is a manual way to add new, but nevertheless most clients can upgrade and they will have the new tax codes inside. The same thing for inactivated. If for example custom do choose to inactivate certain tax codes, all you need to do is go inside the system and inactivate. Now in SQL account, there's actually more than 23 tax codes, because we want to simplify some transactions automation for clients. So if you do see additional tax codes down here, don't worry about them. They are actually for the simplicity of automation. Now I'd like to talk about how to maintain tax codes in SQL stock and inventory module. You can go to stock, maintain stock item, or use our icon. Click on maintain stock item here, and you will be able to open up a stock list. So for example, here I have an item. I have not set any tax codes to it at all. So in SQL account, you are not required to do anything. You can just relax, and even if you have 1,000, 10,000 or 100,000 items, no sort setting for tax codes are required, because the system will automatically set it for you on the 1st of April 2015. How do I prove that? Let's go to a document. Select a client. Today is 31st March 2015. There is no tax. So I pick an item that I have not set. You see there is no tax codes. But let's say tomorrow is the 1st of April. There will be tax for the same exact item. As you can see here, we have assigned a tax codes as well as a 6% to it, which is 60 cents. If the item is 100 ringgit, it will be 6 ringgit. So no setting is required in SQL account for all its service items as well as inventory stock items, because the system will set it for you automatically. For sales, standard rated SR. For purchase, TX. If the client requires to set 0 rated and exempted, only in this particular situation you will need to go and assign, for example, 0 rated here. And once you have done so, on the 1st of April for that particular item, the system will not assign any tax to it, because it is falling under the 0 rated category. So only on those situations that is exempted as well as 0 rated, the client will need to require to do any setting. As you can see here, there is no tax even on the 1st of April. Coming back to the stock list, so only set the exception. Fortunately, for 90+% of the service as well as stock items, it's actually standard rated and TX. So for those, no setting are required. Now I'd like to talk about how to assign tax codes in customer and supplier. First, go to customer, maintain customer, and you will see a list of customer names and of course his phone number and addresses. For most customers, you are not required to do any setting. The only exception is when the customer, let's say it's located in Tioman, Labuan and Langkawi, which is tax-free, or for example this customer over here, it's a foreign country customer and you export to them and they fall under 0 rated for exports. So you can edit and assign a tax code to it, and if you do so, then all the documents that is associated with these clients will be 0 rated. Now you probably will ask the question, but you already have set it to standard rated or TX in the stock item earlier. What will happen? The system is smart enough to know that regardless, the priority is always under customer and supplier first, secondary under stock item. So now we have this US dollar, US based customer, and we sell them an item that are already preset to standard rated. Still, the system understands the priority falls under customer tax code as well as supplier tax code, and therefore give it a 0 rated. There will be no tax calculation in this case. A simple reversal where I choose a different customer and I choose back the same stock item, automatically the system now begin to calculate tax, as you can see here. Now I'm going to show you what is required by Royal Malaysian Custom in a full tax invoice. Go to sales and open up your invoice. This is a very typical key in invoice screen in SQL account. You got your customer, your date, your invoice number, the salesperson, and of course the item. Do pay attention that some items require standard rated tax and other items do not require GST because it is 0 rated. So you have mixed supplies situation in this particular full tax invoice. Therefore, when you do preview or print your invoices, you will, number one, compulsory required to have a GST company number. This is a unique number, similar to your company registration number or even a personal IC. It is only unique to your company. One company, one number. So this is compulsory to have in your full tax invoice. The second thing that is compulsory to have in your full tax invoice is the summary of the GST total amount. Over here, it's 16 ringgit and 20 cents. And finally, it is encouraged but not compulsory to have is the breakdown of the individual item GST amount. The reason you need a breakdown, or at least encourage, is because, as you can see here, some items are actually zero rated and therefore do not have tax. Other items will require tax. So it is important information for a lot of customers to identify which item has GST and which item do not. Nevertheless, we encourage clients to think clearly before they do any pre-printed tax invoice format. That is because in the past they may have not considered the GST requirement. Now that they have GST, they will need to rethink in terms of what their printout should look like, and we encourage customer to use our default format because clearly this is a tax invoice that is approved by the customs. Now, I'd like to talk about how to do a Malaysian GST return. First, go to GST, New GST Return. Once you open up, you will see a set of dates. Let's say today is the 15th of July 2015, and I would like to do a GST 03 for GST return submission. If my company is less than 5 million ringgit in revenue per year, then my filing should be once every 3 months. So system will automatically detect based on 3 months. But if my company is more than 5 million ringgit in annual turnover, then my filing should be once a month. And system is again smart enough to know that for this current cycle, if it's under 1 month, the next cycle will be also following subsequently as 1 month. If the cycle is actually 3 months, the subsequent cycle will also be 3 months. So let's presume that we are doing a 3 months cycle for GST return. Press the process button. System will automatically be able to generate a set of reports for you. Over here we have a GST 03 for submission. Now let's press on the GST 03. Once you press on it, you'll be able to see a report. The report will break it down very clearly to you. What is your cycle? Right now it's April to June, and this is obviously complied to the custom format, exactly following it. Your GST company number, your company name, the filing cycle, the last date you are supposed to be able to submit this cycle's return, and clearly breakdown of your output, which is the sales value, the tax you collected from sales, minus the tax you collected from purchase, which is input tax over here, and therefore 1008 the tax you collected from sales minus 1002 the tax you paid for purchases equals to 600, and these are the 600 that you will need to pay for customs. For the rest of the information, it will automatically populate by SQL Account GST 03 report. The human really do not require any intervention. There will be a electronic format for GST submission to the custom website TAP tab, and we will be able to show you in future videos. So if there is a manual print, you can print out in a manual format. Of course, you can, as usual, export it to PDF as well as other formatting. in SQL account, you can drill down from your GST03 report. Now, for example, I see my sales for this duration of 3 months is actually 30,000 and my output tax is 1,008. How do I know this number is reliable and accurate? Of course, the easiest way is actually drill down by double clicking on 30,000, and it will give you a breakdown of what document and what item itself that made up the 30,000. As you can see here, total value sales is 30,000, and what are the contribution for tax, in this case output tax. And if I see a particular number that I'm interested at, I can double click further to go down all the way to the source document that gives me my sales number as well as my taxation number. So from the GST03, then to the table that will give you the listing, and finally to the document itself, a complete drill down to source. The same thing can be said for the purchasing side. For example, if I'm looking at this number on purchasing for input tax is 1,002 and I want to drill down, I can double click on it and I can see there is 3 documents that made up the purchases, and if I drill down further, I will be able to go to my supplier invoice. Now I'm going to talk about GAF in SQL account. GAF basically stands for GST audit file. This file is in all GST compliance software and it's required by the Royal Malaysian Customs. Now, the Royal Malaysian Customs will occasionally, if they choose to, require you to do a GST audit file for them in order for them to do auditing. The way to produce this file is basically going to GST, print GST audit, and you will open up a screen like this one. The Royal Malaysian Customs will tell you from what date to what date that they require the GAF file. So all you need to do is follow their dates. For example, if I choose to do I'm requested to do from April 1st to 30th September 2015, then I will choose this date and just press the button apply. The system will pre-generate a list for me so that I can see clearly what are the transactions that is going to be printed out or generated in the GAF. So in general ledger, GL, as well as sales, and of course purchases. And if everything is in order, then I can save the text file, and perhaps in this case I will save it to my desktop. Once I have done that, I can go to my desktop and look for the file, and my file will be found here, GAF, and I can double click on it. I will open up basically a text file, and you can able to submit this text file to the customs straight away by just going to their online portal TAP, and just submit this file, upload it to them. Now I'd like to talk about GST reports. In SQL account, to look for the Malaysian GST, you can always drop down here and select the reports that you like to see. However, you are also able to open up the GST return and select the periods of your taxation return cycle or submission in order to view relevant dates submission reports. So for example, here I have 2 cycles and I choose to open up the tax return for between April to June. If I double click on it, I will be able to see this screen from April to June, and then if I go to print GST listing or print GST03 or any other reports, I will be able to open up screens like this one from April to June. As you can see here, it gives you a very detailed breakdown listing of what is in your standard rated for tax as well as purchases, and of course all this transaction can be double clicked to drill down to source document. Now, if I want to view a different month, I can always go to the next tax return submission cycle. Let's say in this case it will be 1st of July to 30th of September. I can press apply and we'll be able to view a second listing over here, as you can see. And now this one I have further breakdown of individual tax categories for this particular cycle of some tax return. Of course, I can also choose which tax return I just want to view. For example, if I just want to see only under exempted, apply again, I will be able to see those that's under exempted alone. And if I do want to preview the report, I can of course always preview, and we'll be able to clearly see the numbers that I want to see for perhaps cross comparison purposes. It will give you the detailed breakdown of every tax codes and whether it's under sales or under purchase. Now, the other thing is, finally, your GST 03, you can always reprint your GST 03 by month or by quarterly. In this case, it will be April to June. It will be exactly the same as the one you have filed for the GST return earlier. Now I'd like to talk about the topic of tax inclusive. Go to sales invoice. If you look at this invoice, you will see that there is two items that is of the same code, same quantity, same unit price, but they will end up with a different sales subtotal. The reason is item number 1 use the regular tax calculation of 100 ringgit multiplied by 6%, you get a 6 ringgit tax, and therefore add up together is 106. But on item number 2, the 100 ringgit itself is the net sales value that is already included tax. Therefore, system will need to auto reverse do a calculation when you do a tick to get a lower sales value to get a tax amount. The reason is because clients still required to pay tax on tax inclusive. It's merely the business reduce the sales value to absorb the tax amount for the client so that the client will get the 100 ringgit as a net sales value. How does it look like in the invoice? If you look at this invoice, you will be able to clearly see the reduced sales value. Now, why isn't the reduced sales value included in the unit price? That is because if you do lower your unit price and the client come back again and request for on a second round, request for a tax inclusive from a lower sales value, then you will be perpetually lowering and lowering your sales price. Obviously, that is not a situation most business want. So that is the topic of tax inclusive. I would like to highlight another issue of the cents. Now let's look at this third item. This is an item 5 ringgit, 5 quantity for 5 ringgit and 50 cents. What is the tax amount? Clearly, it is not that simple. That is because in GST tax 6%, you will end up with a lot of roundings issues. There is a lot of sense behind it. Now, because this is a tax invoice, you are not required to round up both at the item level as well as the subtotal level. Therefore, you can print out as it is. But if you are doing a manual calculation, this will become very, very difficult. So we encourage client to look into SQL account to solve your billing and invoicing problems. Now I'm going to talk about GST in SQL account for general ledger. First, if you look at your maintain chart of account, you'll be able to see that there is now a field for you to key in and preset your tax codes for your all the expenses as well as any other accounts that is in the chart of account. Now, for example, if I'm making the presumption that whenever I do sales, it's always going to be standard rated, I can preset inside so that all my accounts personnel and accounts clerk will be easier for them to know what is the right tax account to instead of choosing it on their own. But for example, over here in stationery, I did not choose any account, then they will able to select on their own. Let's do an example. Over here, I'm doing a payment voucher for office expenses. For example, let's say I'm going to key in printing, which I already preset, and if I click on printing, automatically I will be able to calculate a 6 ringgit from 100 ringgit of printing purchase. So system will automatically do the job for you. However, since stationery I did not do any presets, when I click on it, as you can see here, even if I key in the amount, I will still not have a auto tax preset for me. So I can manually select it myself. Even for the one that you have preset, you can of course always manually change if you have the access right. So now that I've done this, I can save it. And let's look at journal as well. If you look at your journal, let's do back the same exact transaction. Over here, we have printing. And you can see automatically the system will calculate the 6 ringgit for you for printing because you already preset inside the chart of account. And to make it interesting, I'm going to, let's say, use a Maybank for this payment of printing. What I do key in here is actually 106. Now the reason is very simple. The check you have issued is actually 106 ringgit because 6 ringgit, while you purchase only 100 ringgit of printing, 6 ringgit actually goes to taxation. That way the system will tally in both debit and credit for your journal. And finally, if you look at the ledger, you'll be able to clearly see that for your GST claimable account, you'll be able to see the breakdown, as well as your GST payable account. In your GST payable account, of course, you will be able to see the GST payable transaction. Now this is even before you generate a GST 03 and do a GST return process.